But my honest belief is that the only way you are going to regularly email your list and provide value to them in those emails is if you are creating regular weekly content.
Welcome to the Online Genius Podcast, where host and renegade-thinking beer-brewing lawyer turned online entrepreneur Bobby Klinck proves that building and protecting your online genius doesn't have to be rocket science. Bobby and his expert guests break down online marketing and the legal stuff so you can stop sweating the small stuff and get back to building your amazing business. Now, here's your host, Bobby Klinck.
Hey there, welcome to episode 67 of the Online Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klinck. And I am really excited for today's show because I'm going to be talking about a concept that I think is really important. It's the idea of small list, big impact. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes entrepreneurs hear about people with huge email lists or huge social media followings, and that can kind of be depressing because if you hear about people who have a list of 100,000 people, you may feel like, I don't know how I'm ever going to get there, and feel like it's going to be impossible to succeed. And so I know that's something that a lot of people worry about. And I know it's something that can feel like insurmountable. And I'm here in today's episode, I wanted to talk about why you don't have to have a huge list to make a good living as an online entrepreneur. Now, when I talk to other entrepreneurs in the space about my launches and how I do and how things perform, and I share my numbers with them, they tend to be floored, I'll be honest with you. And it's because they can't believe how well my audience converts to buying my product. And, again, I could give you a bunch of metrics if you, listen to my podcast a couple episodes ago where I walked through my results of my recent launch. You got a sense of me having some good performance. But another way to look at it is a lot of people throw around a number in, that you should generally make about $1 per month for every person on your email list. That's kind of a standard metric that people talk about. Well, I've already made $12 per person on my list this year, and we're not even 2 months into the year. I'm recording this. I think it's like February 19th or something as I'm recording this. And so when you think about that, I've already, way exceeded things. Theoretically, if I didn't grow my list, I don't have to make another dollar and, I've hit that number. Again, that's not what I'm shooting for, but that's kind of where the numbers work. And I don't say this to brag. I say this to try to help you understand that I truly believe that if you treat your email list the right way, you can have similar results. Now, it may not happen right away. It may take you a while to find your footing. It may be something you stumble about, but I believe there is actually a process you can go through to have a very engaged and buying list so that you aren't just sending things out to the ether. You, in fact, are getting good results. But you have to be mindful of it. You have to actually try to do it. So that's what today's episode's about. I'm going to walk you through kind of, step-by-step process of the different things you need to be doing if you want your list to be an engaged list that's going to buy. So that's what we're going to talk about. But before we do, this week's episode, as always, is brought to you by the Online Genius Podcast community on Facebook. Again, I love coming to you every week in this podcast and providing information, having great guests, talking with you, giving you lessons, giving you insights, giving you those things that I've learned. But quite honestly, my favorite thing to do is to engage with you and other online entrepreneurs. And I can't do that directly through a podcast. It's just not possible. That's where the community comes in. It's a free Facebook group where we talk, where, a chance for you to ask me questions, where I offer other insights, where sometimes I do extra trainings. It's just a chance for us to actually engage with each other, you with me, but also with the other people in the group. It's a group of people who are all thinking the same way that, hey, I want to build a business for the long term. I'm not in this for some, give me 10,000 followers in 10 days kind of approach. If that's you, and if you would like to be able, to engage with me, to ask questions, and to be around a bunch of other amazing entrepreneurs, I'd love for you to join. It's absolutely free. You just go to youronlinegenius.com/community. Again, youronlinegenius.com/community, and you can join absolutely free. So now let's dive in. And I want to start with a little bit of a preface here. What I'm going to be talking about here is how you can build an engaged email list. Now, I'm not here to tell you that that is the only way to build your business. I know a lot of entrepreneurs who are building their businesses with social media, and that is something that you can definitely do. And I'll be honest with you, I'm working to do that, to build that part of my marketing too. But I do believe that an email list is a very powerful thing, and that we should all be working to build an engaged email list. So what I'm going to be focusing on today is how you can create that kind of engaged list that you can send emails to. Now, think of it as a way to supplement, etc. What I would say is largely what I'm going to talk about here are the same kinds of things you need to be doing on social media if you want to use social media as your vehicle to market people. A lot of these kind of lessons and the general concepts are going to be things that apply everywhere because it's general thoughts, it's general ways of approaching things to be engaged and actually have a connection. So with that, I want to go ahead and dive in. Now, the first piece of having an engaged list is that you have to adopt the stance that you're going to give, and you're going to give some more. Literally, the more you are willing to give for free to people in your community, the better. This is honestly the best way to build your list, but it's also the best way to connect with your list. I actually think about an example of something I saw, not in the context of an email list, but that applies to this. You know, it's my friend Tyler McCall, who is an Instagram guru. He had a post about this, about how, hey, quit worrying about how many followers you have and start serving the followers you already have. In other words, don't worry about getting the next follower, worry about serving the people who are already in your world. And when you do that, and he was talking about Instagram, but what I'm going to tell you is the same is true of your email list. When you start doing that with people on your email list, you're going to get plenty more people coming. But more importantly, you're not just going to have people on your list. You're going to have fans and raving fans and super fans and people who are going to come to your defense. And you know, they're going to be kind of like your ride or die people. They're going to be the people who just want to help you build your business. So adopt this stance of giving. And I want to give you some examples of how I'm doing that, and that may help kind of spark some ideas for you. Now, let me start with my primary lead magnet that I drive people to is a lead magnet where people can, you know, it's about your website policies. That's where I have my ad spend. That's where I'm sending most people. So most people, that's their first interaction with me. They download, it's called my ultimate website guide. Once you download that, you go through a welcome sequence. On that welcome sequence, I give them a second freebie. And when I say a second freebie, it's not just any freebie. It's access to my free training portal called the Online Genius Academy with 30 plus videos that you get. Basically, you know, it used to be my paid training, but I just said, you know what, forget it. I'm going to make it all free. I'm going to give it all away to everybody. And so it's in there. Plus, like inside that academy, I don't know the number, but there's probably 6 or 7 downloadable, guides, checklists, etc. So essentially all my freebies, I just give it to you. And I make it very easy for people. Now, if you don't have that yet and you want to get it, you can grab that by going to youronlinegenius.com/academy. But that's not my point in talking about it. My point in talking about it is to give you this sense that when people are kind of getting into my world, they've signed up for one freebie, they've gotten a couple of emails from me, and then I say, oh, by the way, here's this other freebie, go get it. And it's a truly valuable freebie. It's the kind of thing that most lawyers would charge them for. Most lawyers would say, you only get this if you buy a $1,000 or $2,000 course from me, and I'm giving it to people for free. Well, you can just think about it. What's going to happen when you do that? People are automatically going to say, wow, if he's given me this, I wonder what the paid stuff is like. So you want to build that kind of momentum. And the best way to do that is to give them more freebies. And so one thing I would suggest to you, every time you create a new freebie, before I put it out to the market, before I let anybody sign up for it, first thing I would do, I would send it to your email list. I would say, hey, I created this new freebie, thought you might like it. And just give it to them. Don't make them sign up. Don't make them do anything. Just send them the thing. Because if you do that, it's going to create all kinds of goodwill and going to make them say, hey, this person takes care of me. This is someone I want to follow. This is someone I want to make sure that I stay in their world. So that's part of it. I mean, that kind of attitude of giving and giving and giving and creating more freebies and giving it to people, et cetera, is hugely valuable. Now, if you're creating a freebie every week, don't do this. I mean, don't do it if you're like creating a freebie with every piece of content you create, then I wouldn't do it. But if you only release a few extra freebies a year, I would do it. And I would just do it as a way to build that goodwill. Now, the other part of giving, and what I do, and people have commented on this, is you have to give your time. And I do this in spades. I respond to any email I get, and that blows people away. When I get people who respond to one of my weekly emails and I respond, people are often blown away because they say that, they didn't expect me to actually respond. So that just level of touch point of actually engaging with people is worth so much, in goodwill. So definitely do that. If anyone sends you a response to any email you send them, one of your automated emails, make time to respond, because when you do, you're going to build that goodwill. Now, the other thing you're going to want to do, if you have a community like my podcast community, you get in there and you answer questions and you spend time. And again, this is more of just giving of your knowledge, giving of your time, giving of all of that. And it builds this goodwill for people. And then the last piece, if you listen to last week's episode, you maybe have a sense of where I'm going here. You want to give in other people's communities too, where your email list is. If people on your list are likely to be in another person's group, if you're over there answering questions, again, it's just going to kind of further cement in their mind that you are a giver, that you're someone that they want to be listening to and following. So that's kind of the first part, is adopt this mentality of I'm going to give and keep giving and keep giving and keep giving, and make sure to treat your existing list with that kind of love. Remember, it's much easier to keep the people who are already in your world, already on your list, and keep them, engaged than it is going to be to go and find new people. So that's the first piece, is give and take care of your people. Now, the next thing is, to me, it's kind of obvious, but I've got to say it. You have to engage with your list. And there's two parts to this. Number one, you got to email your list regularly. And I want to be clear on this. It pretty much means I want you emailing your list every single week. And I know a lot of people hear that and it's daunting. When I was starting out, it was daunting. I didn't know how to do it. I was like, what in the world am I going to say? I was worried about all kinds of different problems, and I came up with excuses. And guess what? I didn't have much success. Then I started doing it, and I started regularly emailing every single week. And then during promotions, even more, obviously. And yes, you are going to have people unsubscribe from your list. Guess what? That's good. You should celebrate when people unsubscribe. If you don't have people unsubscribing from your email list on a regular basis, you are not doing your job. Because the only way you're having no one to unsubscribe is if you're not emailing your list. And if you're not emailing your list, they're not going to get to know you. They're not going to get to trust you. They're not going to get to like you. And guess what? Then when it comes time to email them, when you have a promotion, they're going to be like, who the heck is this person? What you need to be is you need to be just kind of a welcome presence in their email inbox. They're going to be like, okay, hey, I'm expecting an email. Like for me, it's people on my list expect an email from me on Tuesdays because that's when my podcast comes out. And so I email them. And so it becomes an expectation. Now, maybe they don't like a given email. Maybe they don't read it, but they come to expect it. And so I am a presence. And so that builds up that trust. It builds up kind of that rapport. So that's the first thing. You've got to be emailing people regularly. You have to do it. Again, if you miss a week, okay, that's not a big deal. But if you go months without emailing your list and then try to email them a promotion, it's never going to work. I mean, they're going to be like, no. So you've got to be emailing them, especially when you're not in promotions. But the other part of engaging with your list, and this is something that, I learned from my mentor, Amy Porterfield, and I apply it. You have got to create regular content to give value to your list. And this is one of those sorry, not sorry moments. I believe you need regular weekly content. Now, if you're not creating any content right now, let's start by getting you to monthly content. And then let's get to every other week. And then let's get to weekly. But my honest belief is that the only way you are going to regularly email your list and provide value to them in those emails is if you are creating regular weekly content. I know I've been on some people's list who will email me every week, but they don't create content. I'll just be honest with you, except for the unicorns who are like copywriters and just funny and tell great stories, and I'm there just for amusement. Other than those people, I unsubscribe. Because if you're just going to email me about random stuff, I'm like, no, thank you. And maybe I'm weird. Maybe I'm different from most folks, but I'll tell you what it has been. I've seen the successful people are the people who put out regular content and they email their list about it. And I'll be honest with you, I hear a lot of people say, well, you don't have to do that. And again, you don't have to, I agree. But again, this is me being blunt. This is my sorry, not sorry moment. What I'm going to tell you is you need to be doing it. You don't have to. You can get by without it. But I will tell you that when you start creating regular content every single week that has value that you can email your list about, you will be in much better shape. Now, again, the traditional ways of doing that are a blog, a podcast, a YouTube channel, but you could do non-traditional things. Maybe you want to do Facebook Lives and email your list about that. Maybe you want to do Instagram TV and email your list about that. I'm not going to tell you what you have to create, what kind of content you have to create. That's a decision you have to make yourself. What I'm telling you is you need some form of content that's coming out on a regular basis that has value that your people, your list is going to want to get access to and consume. It's the only way that I believe most people will create the content or create the connections by emailing regularly and keep people engaged. So that's what you're going to need to do is commit to do that. And I just challenge you, commit to do that for, let's say, 3 months and see what happens. And I will tell you, you are going to have a much better result. You're going to have a more engaged list and things are going to be much better for you. That takes me though now to the next step. So we've talked about the first 2 steps, which is you need to embrace a spirit of giving with your list, take care of them, et cetera. And then you have to engage with them and email them, et cetera. So those kind of are related. Now we're going to get to the third part. And this relates back to the lesson that, my content strategist, Jillian Bowen shared. And, we talked about it a lot during her episode, which was episode 63. It's this concept of looping content. The idea is that you never quite know when people are going to be ready to interact with you. And that really kind of applies to a lot of different things. Like they don't understand, maybe it's, not today, maybe it's not tomorrow, but the idea is getting lots of different touch points. And she talks about it, and we talked about it in that episode with respect to your content. Well, I wanted you to think about that more broadly, that it's not just about your content. It's about everything you do. The more that you can loop engagement and engage with people in different places, different platforms, and almost become just a constant presence in their life, not annoying, but a constant useful presence, the better. What I'll tell you is people who are on my email list, who are just on my email list, but let's say don't listen to this podcast, I don't interact with them on Facebook, I don't interact with them on Instagram, they might be fans. But they definitely aren't the kind of super fans who I can count on to, step in to tell people, hey, go to Bobby, or to do all of those other things. The people who I have that kind of engagement with, they are the people who help me in so many different ways. And again, what you'll find is having that core group of people who do that is hugely valuable. Like if you have the people who are just going to, like and comment on your posts on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, guess what? That helps the algorithm say, hey, this is valuable. I want to show it to more people. So it's going to help you in all of those ways, not to mention that those are the people who are likely to buy from you, to buy on the first day, to become affiliates, to do all of those things that are really good and will help you make money. So think of it this way. The more touch points you can have with people, the better. Again, without being annoying. I mean, you can't be like forcing your way into things, but if you have a way to make sure that you engage with people in your email, but also on social media, so they see you, they can get value from you in different ways on their schedule, that's best. So again, a Facebook group can be a great way to do that, right? I mean, if you can have a Facebook group for yourself where you engage with people, if that's where your customers and followers are, it's a great way to do it, right? Because you can provide value. You can drop in, you can go back and forth and chat. You can do live videos. You can do trainings in there. You can just do all kinds of stuff and provide all kinds of value. But it could also be as simple as like engaging with people who, maybe they're a follower. You probably don't, but if you engage it with people who kind of fit within your customer profile, you'll end up engaging with them. But engaging on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter, or wherever your people are. Now, I don't do LinkedIn. I don't do Twitter. I mean, I have accounts, but I don't do them. I don't spend any time there, but I do on Instagram and I do on Facebook because I know that's where a lot of my folks are, and it's a way that I can reach them. So the key here is find as many places as possible to connect, to engage, to be around the people, to give them value so that you're not just communicating with them via email. That way, there is this way for them to really get to know you, really get to like you, really get to trust you because they're seeing you in a lot of different places. So that's kind of the third piece. The fourth piece is, and this one gives people trouble. You've got to be open. You've got to be authentic. You've got to be real, and you've got to be raw. Now, what this comes down to is in your emails, in your social media, in everything you do, you need to, let's start with I've talked about this before. It's what I call the more cowbell initiative. You first heard me start talking about that way back in like September, I think. But what it comes down to is you have to be yourself. You can't hide behind what you think you're supposed to be, the kind of professional that you're supposed to be, or the kind of whatever buttoned up, person that you really aren't. And for a long time, I was doing this. For a long time, I was hiding behind what I now call lawyer man. It was this very buttoned up lawyer, and that's not me. That never was me. That's not my personality. That's never been the person I am. And so when I was doing that, I was not connecting with people because guess what? When you're not being authentic, people know it and people don't want to connect with you. Right when I made the switch, like I literally had someone who had known me from groups and all this and had been on my list email in response to something and say, for the first time, I was someone that she wanted to do business with because before I always seemed very corporate. And then after I made this switch to being me, she's like, you seem like a real person, someone I want to be with around, someone I want to spend time with. And people will sense that. And so I'm going to press you on this. You've got to just be you. If you are, a nerd at heart, be a nerd. If you're, me, I'm an old punk rocker, quite honestly, and I've got to admit that and I've got to embrace that. And trying to be someone who's not, someone I'm not isn't going to work. If you're someone who cusses a little bit, don't be afraid to cuss a little bit. Because quite honestly, that will actually draw people to you. Yes, it'll repel some people, but it will draw your people to you. And that's the most important thing to do. So that's kind of the first piece is be yourself. No one else can do that. Don't try to be someone else that you're not. The other part of this, though, is, curated and pretty aren't the key to connecting with people. And I see these comments all the time in Facebook groups I'm in where people are very worried about their Facebook Live because they feel like they need things to be pretty and really look perfect. Quite honestly, what I'll tell you is most people I know, who are live video gurus will actually tell you that for the most part, that's not what people want. People don't want your video to look perfect. People don't want your set to look perfect. People want to see you, the real you. What is your life? What is your business actually like? Don't feel like you got to dress up. If you're someone who would normally be in a t-shirt, wear a darn t-shirt. Don't worry about that. And definitely don't let it stop you from taking action. So how does this apply in your emails? Well, it applies just like everything else. Don't spend a lot of time trying to get pretty templates no, just email people. Just email people. That's why, when you look at my email, it's just white text. There's nothing else. Sometimes I put pictures, but that's about it. But in everything else you're doing, you got to be real, authentic, etc. And in the content you're creating for your people on a regular basis, you've got to just, don't worry about pretty and curated, be real. But now I want to talk a little bit about some specific topics and some specific things. And this is about the content I create, but it relates to how I connect with my email list because I share this with my email list, right? I share it in a lot of different ways through this podcast, but through my emails, etc. People love it when I share my numbers in a real way. And the trick, you can't be doing it to brag, right? If that's why you're doing it, if you're trying to do it to say, look at me, I'm very good at this, it's not going to work. And that's never been my approach. I first did an episode of my podcast sharing numbers last May after my first launch, where I think my numbers were like 30 grand or 20 something grand was what I brought in revenue. And I was doing it quite honestly because I felt like people would want to hear, I felt really good about that launch. I was like, wow, this is cool. But I knew that what I'd been hearing were from the people doing 6- and 7-figure launches. And so I thought a lot of people had that same view. And so I thought people would want to hear, hey, you can do these 5-figure launches and be pretty darn happy about it. And people loved that. People loved that, but also loved because I was from the beginning willing to share the lessons, the things that I screwed up. People love hearing you admit where you screwed something up if you've identified it and can explain it. Now, again, what I'm going to tell you is you can't be someone who's wallowing in the things you've screwed up. If you're talking about how you did everything wrong and how the something sucked and all that, that's not going to work. People don't want to hear that. But if you can find lessons, say, hey, I made this mistake, I'm not going to make it again, that can be powerful. Now, again, I'm going to give you another little caveat here. I think it helps that those stumbles, I'm not actively out there, trying to teach people how to launch a product, right? That's not what I'm doing. I don't have a course about launch or something like that. Now, I may have a group coaching program soon, but when I've done these episodes, there really is no ulterior motive, right? So I can be 100% honest and I don't have to worry that people are going to say, well, why do I want to learn from that idiot? He doesn't know what he's doing, right? People can just connect with me when I share these things. But I think even when you do have a product, sharing how you've struggled and how you're not someone who's up, 150, steps beyond your community is helpful. And so people are going to like to hear those things. And so make sure to share those things. And again, if you're on my email list, I make fun of myself quite a bit, not about anything business related, often about how I miss the obvious and my wife, points it out to me. But, that's real. That's an honest thing. And so, I think people like those kinds of, honesty of sharing those things. But another thing people love is honest emotion, not fake emotion. People aren't going to want to hear from you if you're, fake, I don't want to say fake crying. You wouldn't do that, but you don't want to have that, fake overly anything if it's not true. But if you actually have emotion about something, if you actually are excited, if you actually are sad, people will love that and it will help them connect with you. Because guess what? They will hear that you are a real person, which is what ultimately people want to hear. And, a little foreshadowing, I haven't done it yet, so I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm bringing someone who's in my mastermind on with me, Dr. Shannon Irvin, who is someone who does mindset work and helps people get past blocks, et cetera. And I'm bringing her on in a couple or a few weeks. I don't know, have the schedule in front of me. And what I've challenged her to do is to go through her process, the result of which very well may be to make me cry in the middle of my episode. And if I do, you're going to hear it. I'm going to share it with you unedited. You're going to hear everything because, I think that's a value to you because I think, I'm a recovering blockhead, and openly sharing that with you is something that I think is valuable. But I give that to you as a lesson that sharing your emotion, sharing your struggles can be useful. Now, again, you can't wallow. It can't be that you're sad all the time, and trying to bring people down. If you do that, people are going to unsubscribe and it's not going to be useful. But sharing things, where you are struggling and your emotions about that from time to time can certainly be a valuable piece of the puzzle. Now, that's kind of a big one. Be authentic, be open, be real, and be raw. And a lot of people struggle with that, but you've got to do that if you want to connect with your audience generally, and especially your email list, because let's be honest, email is not a medium that's going to naturally have a lot of emotion. So if you do that, it will make a difference. Now, the final piece here, and this is the only thing that's really, truly tactical here that I'm going to share with you. You need to clean your list. Over the last 10 months or so, I've purged almost 4,000 subscribers from my list proactively. These are not people who unsubscribe themselves. This is me going in and saying, these people are still subscribed, but I am deleting them. And what I'll tell you is my current list size is somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000. So, 50% of the people who I could have on my list, I've purged. And I did that myself. And that is something that a lot of people aren't doing. And you're probably listening there saying, I'd never do that. I mean, most people have that attitude. And what I'll say is this, people get hung up on list size, right? List size is a vanity metric. You should not care about the overall size of your list. I don't care if you have 100,000, 1,000,000, or 10,000 people on your list. At the end of the day, what you should care about are the people who are actually engaging with you from your list. In other words, what good are people who are on your list but never open an email? If someone's on your list and literally never opens, are they really valuable to you? Well, the answer is no. I mean, if they're not opening your emails, guess what? They're never going to click on a promotion, so they're never going to buy from you. But actually, what's likely to happen is at some point, many months from now, at some point, they're going to see this email, and they're going to open it, and they're going to say, who the heck is this person? This is spam, and they may mark you as spam. And now, I'll be honest with you, many weeks, it's not every week, but many weeks, I get at least one spam complaint. And, not even on race emails. Now, on my racier emails, if you've been on my list for a few weeks, and, there was one a while back where my subject line referred to Russian strippers, not because of me, but again, because of my friend Jillian Bowen told the story in the podcast about that. But that one I would expect to get some spam complaints, I'll be honest with you, but hey, it was fun. I didn't really care. But, spam complaints, as long as you're not getting a ton of them, aren't a huge problem. It's not going to affect your emails, but it will bother you. They still do bother me, I'll be honest with you. I don't mind people unsubscribing, but people marking me as spam, I'm like, you son of a, but we'll get over that. But the problem is if you have enough of them, it can be a problem. And so you don't want to let that happen. So people who are never opening your emails, they don't provide value. If anything, they're going to bring your list down. So you don't want them. But again, here's the other thing. Depending on the size of your list and your email service provider, having people on your list who are not opening means you're paying money to have them on your list to provide no value. So why do you want to do that? Don't do it. And don't get, all excited about list size. That's not what matters. So you should be cleaning your list regularly. I recommend doing it quarterly. I've been doing it quarterly for the last 3 to 4 quarters, I guess. Here's how I do it to give you a sense. I search for the people who haven't opened any emails in the last 60 days. And I always put a little metric on because I start with people who've been on my particular, my overall newsletter segment. So my big segment for at least 1 month, because they would have been, almost another month before then on a welcome sequence before they could have gotten onto that. But so I want to say they've been on that list for at least a month and haven't opened anything in 60 days. So that means either they've been on my overall list for longer than that, or they literally never opened a single thing I sent them, which whatever. So I do that. And then I tag them. I tag them as cold. I then send a series of 3 emails to that segment who has been tagged as cold. And the point of this is very simply, I want to try to get them to make a decision, yes or no. Either go ahead and click unsubscribe if you don't want to do it, or click something that says they want to stay on it. What I'll tell you is those emails don't tend to get a very high open rate because, again, these are people who have not been opening my email. So I literally just went through this sequence and just deleted people, but I'm going to give you some statistics so you can get a sense of kind of what my open rates, et cetera, were for this. So for the first email I sent, I had a grand total of 2% of the people open it. So 2.1% open it. The second email in the series, I got 3% to open. And then the final, the last one got 7% open. And the reason why that last one got a higher percentage is I said immediate action required, and there was an emoji in the subject line, et cetera. But again, so you think about it, even with a, action-oriented subject line, I only got 7% open. But so those are, not emails that a lot of people are going to open. So most of the people who you tag on this, you are going to get rid of. But what you're going to do is you're going to ask them ultimately to click on a link if they want to stay on your list. If they click on that, your email service provider, you should be able to set up what's called an automation, or it'll be called something different in different programs. But basically what it'll do is if they click that, it removes the cold tag from their, from that subscriber. So I do that over a period of 3 weeks, basically. And then at the end of that third week, people who haven't clicked, who are still tagged as cold, I delete them. And I should be clear, I have to do a little bit of extra work because my email service provider is Kartra, who also provides certain things like it's where I have my paid product. So I have to make sure that nobody on that list is a paid buyer, because if so, I have to make sure they stay on my list. But everybody else gets removed. And that's it. They're gone. I delete them. Literally, I just deleted something like 1,400 people going through it this most recent round. And did it hurt? Nope, not at all. I'm at the point I don't mind. I don't care about it because I'm just saying these people really don't care about being on my list. And so you should adopt this plan too of cleaning your list. Just get rid of the people who aren't opening. Some people are much more aggressive than me. Some people will do it after 30 days. I believe doing it quarterly and using 60 days, haven't opened an email. Again, if you are sending emails every single week, that means they've gone at least 8 emails without opening. If someone hasn't opened any of your last 8 emails and then don't open the 3 emails in your resubscribe sequence, it's a pretty safe bet you can get rid of them. Again, they can always find you again if they want to. But that's what I recommend to people. Clean your list regularly. So that's it. Those are kind of the 5 different pieces that I think are key to why my community reacts well, converts well, etc. I give and give and give some more. You should do the same. I regularly engage with my list, emailing every week with new content every single week. And by the way, I'm now creating all kinds of other content that I'm feeding to folks on social media. But my list, once a week, you're getting my email. Then, you've got to find ways to loop engagement around so you engage with them, not just in the email, but in the email, social media, etc. You got to be authentic, open, and real, and you got to clean your list. If you do all of those things, your email list will be a highly tuned, engaged list that is likely to respond, likely to buy, and the kind of list we should ultimately want to have. A list full of people who actually want to hear from us and who actually want to be our fans. So I commend you to take these steps to do this, and you will have a much better, much healthier list, and you'll be set up for success over the long term. So that's it. That's it for this week's episode. I'll see you back here next week for another episode of the Online Genius Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Online Genius Podcast. Make sure to tune in next week for more great tips, tricks, and strategies to help you build and protect your online genius.